Hey, how you doing, everybody? I'm the Dr. Bob Lee from 107.5 WPLS and the Make the Grade Foundation for Education. You're watching Rude Rangers TV.
Stephen Graham is an actor. He has appeared across the board on stage, several television projects, and on film. And he has just directed his first feature film, which he also wrote, and it's debuting at the Boston Film Festival this week. Now, this interview won't air until after the festival is concluded. It runs September 22nd through the 26th in Boston. And it is called The Secret of Synchony. And I have watched the movie, and it is quite impactful. First of all, Stephen, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. The first thing I like to ask people, and we'll get into the film and various aspects around your career, and obviously the secret of Synchony. But I like to ask people, what got you personally, Stephen, to a point where you wanted to make film, you wanted to commit your life to it, you wanted to make it a career? What inspired you to do that? What drew you to the medium of motion pictures?
Well, I think there's probably a two-part answer to that. I think that like most filmmakers, I came up in a generation where we could pick up a camcorder and make our own videos and make our own, which would then kind of evolve into short films, show it to the neighborhood kind of thing, and then you get a reaction from that, and then you kind of study maybe how to cut it. But the second part of that is taking it from a hobby to something that maybe could be a career that you can spend your life potentially doing. So the passion was there from a young age. I think that the other component to that was doing Sunday school plays at church on stage, playing various characters in the Bible and whatnot, and so having that kind of like acting curiosity to sort of continue to do that. I think as I got into my teens, it was like, well, is that a practical endeavor? And I think that a lot of filmmakers ask themselves that. Do I go to film school? Do I take the money that I would otherwise spend on tuition at film school, and do I just go off and make a film, and try to make something in somebody's backyard, or that sort of thing? So to answer that, where the sort of catalyst was, I had made a decision. I was in my second year of university. I was actually on an academic scholarship, hoping to go pre-med.
Wow. Because
I felt like I couldn't. Maybe it was a very impractical endeavor. I was one of few that went to university out of my family, so I was taking my studies very seriously. But I kind of kept feeling like I was being pulled away, and perhaps wasn't in pursuit of my passion. And it was at around that time in my second year that I decided that I would, try to get an agent and, maybe do some local plays, in and around town, in a little farm town I was going to university in. And so I pursued that, and then I got an agent, and then I, with a little bit that I had learned on set, I thought, okay, well, maybe I'll make a short film and see how that goes. And so the first short film I made professionally was a true story based on my mother's side of the family, which were survivors of World War II. They were Polish farmers. And so it all takes place in one night where they rescue their son. And I shot it on black and white film, Super 16. I had begged, borrowed, and steeled to make it happen. And that kind of set me off. It's actually moving from Canada to Los Angeles. That was where the door opened, because I was nominated for a Hollywood Film Award for it, which was a great honor. And that piqued the interest of like, wow, I could do this. And then sort of, the pursuit sort of took on from there. But I think for a lot of people, I relate, like when I see other filmmakers that I deeply admire and I see interviews where they talk about when they first got into it. I think for a lot of people, like I came from a very blue-collar working class family. It just seems impractical. Like how do you take the camcorder and those kind of silly videos? We were doing things like Attack of the Killer Vegetables and with plasticine and stop motion and all that. And then we were doing like dramas and all sorts of things, but taking that and going, okay, well, could I do this? And could I do this for the rest of my life? And support myself doing it.
Boy, no kidding. And I hear that a lot from people in the motion picture industry that I talk with, Stephen, is that their life was going one way and they knew it was, but something kept calling them to go that other way, and they finally said, heck with it, man, I'm doing it. And it worked out. It's
a terrifying feeling. I mean, and you don't know it's going to work out, and you have no idea, and there's no safety net for most of us. And I'm in a really interesting place right now where I've never put my work out. I mean, I have as an actor put my work out to the world, but I've never put my work out to the world where I had a hand in everything in terms of writing, directing, producing, even acting in it. And it is terrifying. And you kind of get to a point where you're like, it's everything you wished for. And you kind of just hold your breath, and then you just have to let go, and you realize it's no longer your film. It's off, into the universe, and you just hope that people can relate to it, and it reaches an audience, that it touches.
Boy, absolutely. And like I said, I have seen the film, and not just because I'm talking to you. This is really good work. It's scary.
Thank you.
Okay, we're not going to get into specific plot points, but we'll talk generally, obviously, about the movie, which we're going to do now. Again, the name of the film is Secret of Cinchinae, and it deals with Native American history and heritage, and specifically the spiritual nature of the Native American people. And evil spirits as well. And I've done some research on you. I know you just mentioned, Stephen, that your family has a background in,
yes, on my father's side.
Yeah, with the indigenous people on your dad's side. What you probably were pretty familiar with. I don't know, the indigenous people and their sensibility going in from your family. But what research did you do? Because even though the tribe is fictitious and the elements of the film are fictitious, there was more to that going on. In other words, you made it more substantial in terms of your personal experience, and I would imagine extensive research.
Yeah, I did. I delved very deep into it, not only into my own heritage, but just in dealing with indigenous even folklore. And so I had learned so much that, and I actually have a line in the film where one of the detectives actually does acknowledge it, that for instance, devil worshiping was something that the settlers had sort of demonized the indigenous people into being, because they came to these shores, the settlers came to these shores with Christianity and didn't understand the indigenous people, their rituals, their spirituality, and the easiest thing to do, especially to eradicate or subjugate a group of people when you don't understand them and you fear them, is to put that label on them. And that was a really interesting thing, and I wanted to sort of take that challenge on and tackling that, where the movie takes on a lot of those sort of heavy lifts in terms of how the detectives sort of unravel the story, how they put the pieces together, dealing with the spiritual aspect of it, and then the criminal aspect of it when they're trying to, missing persons and try to put the pieces together. On my own side, my heritage, we're going through it right now, what we're seeing in Canada, which is originally where I'm from, with the residential schools, where you're seeing so much of the history of indigenous people being wiped away.
Yeah.
They found, 151 bodies, I believe, under one of the residential schools in British Columbia, and they started to find that it was a history. And so we see these haunting black and white photos of nurses with these young Indigenous children, and it takes your breath away, and it's evil, and it's just terrible. But a big part of that, as I had learned in reconnecting with some of my own roots, specifically I reconnected with my cousin Catherine, who was like the sister I never had. And she's taught me so much about our heritage, and it's been so enriching for me because, I was sharing this with one of the elders, the Indigenous elders at the Massachusetts Center of Native American Awareness, just outside of Boston. And he said, the best thing that anyone has ever said to me regarding this is welcome home, because so many people in the Indigenous community, even the elders, they actually don't know their roots, because so much of it's been wiped away. And that was a big part of what the objective was with the residential schools. It wasn't just trying to reform to European or North American custom. It was actually to wipe away that history. And so that's been really interesting for me as well, being a student of learning about my own roots and where they connect to. And so I took this challenge on to try to, work outside the confines of the horror thriller genre, to really try to do something hopefully meaningful, as well as giving you that thrill of all the scares and bringing you into this world of Western Massachusetts, during a really cold winter. I mean, you can feel how cold it is on the screen.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
I would say you succeeded in doing that, and
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Absolutely, and people need to see the film to determine for themselves. But this, particularly for your directorial debut, it's pretty damn impressive, Stephen. I also
thank you. That means a lot to me.
Well, thank you, and you're welcome. The challenge of being a director. This is your first. I say your directorial debut as a feature film director. What, if you can break it down this way, and I've talked to several first-time directors, some of your biggest challenges, some of your biggest joys, and maybe one surprise, you're like, whoa, okay, I didn't know this would be a part of the whole deal, but it is. I'm the guy in charge of the film. Let's go full force forward and tackle it. Just basically your experience as a first-time director, because like you say, it was terrifying. And I hear that word a lot for first-time director.
Yeah. So I think that what you don't realize is that a lot of filmmaking on set on the day is actually crisis management, because everything that can go wrong typically will go wrong. Yes. And it's how you manage that. And again, it's surrounding yourself with the right team. You have to be surrounded by problem solvers. There's no time, especially we had limited means to make this movie. And so you don't have money to throw at every problem. You really have to come together as a group and figure out, how do you execute? Oh, we can't do this. What's our pivot? How do we recalibrate the plan for the day? That was a big eye opener to me. The other thing is, you don't have a movie if you don't finish the day. You have to make your days. And so you really have to think on your toes of something's taking too long over here. Oh boy, that means that we're only going to get maybe 1 or 2 hours to shoot this over here. And what's over here is a really, really important plot point that's, this thing could come down like a house of cards. So I think it's time management and crisis management. I think one of the great joys that I had was probably on our second or third day of shooting. We were out in the forest and we were shooting with the kids, and we were doing the backstory to the family history. And I was shooting with actually with my niece, who I cast in it, Alexa Leopold. And it's a scene where they're walking through the forest and she's kind of humming and she's just taking it all in. And we do this beautiful movie shot, and the sun kind of came out right at the right moment, just peeked through the clouds. And I started to tear behind the monitor. I felt weightless. I just couldn't believe just this moment with this child and just how perfect and beautiful and pure it was. And it felt, when we saw the playback, it was very Terrence Malick-esque, in that I couldn't believe that we had captured this. And so you have those kind of moments on set, those I had it, we hired 10 veterans and 1 Gold Star sister on this project, and most of which did not have any background in filmmaking, or especially with acting. And so knowing, I cast very specifically, and knowing exactly what I needed from the character, but then also having these beautiful sort of happy accidents or surprises that kind of come out of, the collaborative process. And that would happen daily, where, you go to bed at night, or you go to bed in the morning because you're shooting through the night and you're just a zombie, and you're just hanging on to those moments of joy of, like, tomorrow you're going to get back out there, and you're going to, hopefully achieve the same. I think some of the kind of like the scarier parts of filmmaking is, when you're the director, when you're the filmmaker, everybody turns to you, and you got, at the end of the day, you take in, hopefully the most informed opinions around you, but the buck stops with you, and that's a big responsibility, and it's not for everybody. And you have to, again, I can't say it enough, make sure that you surround yourself with people that you trust, and people that come to set every day, that are problem solvers, that know what they signed up for, and they're there to work. They're there to work as a team. I really prided myself. My co-founder of my production company, Nate Boyer, he's a Green Beret veteran, ex-NFLer.
Yeah.
He was very instrumental in that, where, we created an environment that was very collaborative, that if you had an idea, or you felt very strongly about something, that you got to voice your opinion. And at the end of the day, you don't want to have too many voices in your ear, but allowing people to come to work every day to feel that they could collaborate, because everybody has a vested interest. Nobody shows up to a movie set and says, let's make a bad film. Everybody shows up, and you want to make the best thing that you absolutely can. And we had some beautiful breakthroughs. There were some great ideas from some of my grips and gaffers, and I'm really proud that we were able to do that, and it's something that I want to continue to do on all of our future projects.
And then you mentioned Nate Boyer, Stephen. I want to talk about, first of all, you co-starred in the movie, and you also, as we say, directed for the first time, wrote the script, and you co-produced. And with all that, you want the best talent you can get in your film. This is a first-rate cast across the board. These performances are
Thank you.
They are. I watch a lot of films, and I'm amazed. Budget's probably smaller than yours, Stephen, at the quality of acting in these independent, low-budget films. And one of the co-stars was Nate Boyer. He plays a police detective in The Secret of Cincinny. And you mentioned that he's a vet. He also, I'm a huge Seahawks fan. I'm in Olympia, Washington, just south of Seattle. So
Nice.
Seahawks roster like 6 seasons ago. He'd never played before. He did several tours of combat duty in the Middle East, came back to University of Texas, walked on, made the team, and then was on the Seattle Seahawks roster of the NFL.
Yeah.
And I'm not short-shrifting any professional in your cast. They're all good. But talk a little bit about Nate Boyer. I know he's also a collaborator with you as well in film, correct?
Yes. So I've known Nate intimately for quite some time, for the good part of a decade, and knowing his story, knowing his transition from Green Beret to civilian to football player at UT to NFLer to then utilizing the GI Bill to go to Lee Strasberg Acting School in Hollywood, and all those sorts of things. So Nate, very much like me, is complete the mission or die trying, and that's why he's not afraid to fail. And you absolutely need to have that, especially in filmmaking, where you can. There's a lot of prep that goes into it, of course, but you have to be willing to fail. So my relationship with him, we actually connected on one of the very first feature-length screenplays that I wrote. deals with veterans and the plight of the veteran transitioning into civilian life. And, I spent the good part of a decade getting that off the ground. I had attached a couple A-listers, and we had so many false starts with it in terms of financing, and we were so close. And a few years ago, we kind of hit a wall, and I said, why don't we recalibrate our plan here? Make something much smaller, no movie stars, we'll make it for no money. And here's my idea. And so I pitched The Secret of Cinchony to him. And so the Veterans Project, which is actually called Sheepdog, will be our third film. So we have one more that we're going to do. That's a heist movie. It's sort of Hell or High Water meets The Departed meets No Country for Old Men that we're going to shoot in West Texas in the new year. It's something that I wrote that I'm going to direct, and Nate has one of the leads in it. So Sheepdog will be our third film, but it was really important. There's no quit in either of us, and so to recalibrate our plan there, and then be able to make a pivot and go, okay, let's, we had these two big A-listers that were attached, and we, like I said, we just kept hitting roadblock after roadblock, and we're like, let's just kind of reformulate our plan, and we'll come back to this, but let's do this right now to prove and show what we can do and what we can do with little means. Yeah. And so I can't say it enough. Like, I'm so proud of our cast and crew. It does take a village. It's not my film. It's our film. And on such a small budget, we got worldwide distribution, and it can happen for anybody out there that's listening to this or watching this, that when you ask me about a cast, especially a cast mostly of non-actors, here's the key. When you're looking at writing or casting these roles, look to people that speak the truth. Some of these people were family members, and they were nervous about taking on these roles. The moment you put a camera on somebody and there's 100 people standing behind the camera, you feel obligated to do something interesting, but it doesn't typically play to truth. And so I cast very specifically to who I thought, would be not only right for the role, but who would trust me to help elevate them playing that particular character. Yeah. And so, I have to thank everybody that did, take that leap of faith with me and trust me, because again, I'm very proud of the performances that we did get. We can talk about Nate really quick here. These are a lot of the veterans that we hired are very A-type personalities, and to trust me and then trust me to allow me to get a more vulnerable performance out of them, which is more fitting to many of the characters. And that was my biggest thing that I hope, really translate and transcends off the screen to the audience. Our sort of villain, if you will, is played by Command Sergeant Major Don Mcallister, who's retired. And he was my second choice. So Nate was the first one cast. Second was Don Mcallister. And, Don is a big muscle, like metalhead type dude, long beard. He's a teddy bear, but 27 years in, and, a grunt, a very proud grunt, and my brother. And, he really trusted me. It's not, as you've seen the film, it's a very three-dimensional performance from him, where his interaction with the young girl, the lead actress in the flashbacks, and again, he had to take a big leap of faith and trust me, because it was so outside of his comfort zone. So I think that, like, in each sort of scenario, I knew what I was looking for, tried to create an environment where it was collaborative with that performer, where I was there to catch them if they were to fall.
Yeah, I do, and not everybody wants to. Still in this day and age, Stephen, not everybody wants to be famous and have their face.
No. Yeah.
Or not.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to get to where people can see the movie after the festival, but
sure.
I'm a huge supporter. My family is, and most Americans and Canadians of military veterans. And this obviously is something that is more than lip service for you. You just told us you've committed to shining light on military veterans, and you worked 10 years to get a film out about veterans. You mentioned the Veterans Project. I know that you work in collaboration with Nate Boyer on Team House Studios, which is focused on employing military veterans in the film industry. What is your? There's obviously an emotional connection to the lives and the experience and commitment to us to keep us free of military veterans.
Well, it starts from a very young age. I, grew up listening to my grandfather's stories, who was, liberated from Americans. He's actually told me the story of the Americans coming up over the horizon like a movie, being a prisoner of war for 5 years on a labor camp held prisoner by the Nazis with my grandmother. And so there was probably, a deep-rooted debt I felt to pay, because I wouldn't be here if that didn't happen. And then I think from there, I had this really interesting experience just over 10 years ago, where I was doing a movie as an actor up in Vancouver, Canada, and I usually drive, do that 24-hour drive to decompress. Well, we had wrapped, and on my way home, it was probably 3 hours north of Los Angeles, and my car broke down. And I was picked up by a tow truck driver. And he was like, buddy, saddle up, we got a long ride, And so he drove me into LA. And during that time, I might have said 2 words. I mean, he had just opened up, he was in the service. He had been deployed 4 times. He had multiple, concussions, traumatic brain injury, post-traumatic stress, a myriad of medications he was on, 3 kids facing bankruptcy. And I mean, I just couldn't believe it. And when I got home to Los Angeles, I was kind of shook from that experience, and I thought, there's got to be more like him, men and women. And so that was the catalyst. And once I started to peel back the onion and start to see, by 2012, we had the veteran suicide epidemic, the stats on that, which was roughly about 22 a day. I became involved as one of the original architects in the 22 push-up challenge, and had worked with a VSO out of Dallas called 22 Kill, which is now transitioned to One Tribe Foundation. And so there was, I was all in. And, I think that, just to speak to the environment, in Team House Studios, that Nate and I is our production company that's committed to empowering and training men and women that wear the uniform in front and behind the camera, was that we're creating an environment that is diverse. It doesn't matter your religion, your race, your background. None of that matters. Your politics. Yeah. It's a family, and it's unified. And are there hard days? Absolutely. Are there big challenges that we try to tackle as a team? 100%. But it's outside of the confines of the Hollywood system. There's no bullshit. Good. You come, you work hard. We hope to give you a great opportunity. We hope to give you a great experience, a lifelong experience. And hopefully for those that have served and have spent their time in the barracks or on a FOB or, on a COF somewhere, that there's some level of nostalgia outside of the danger, obviously, of being in harm's way, but of that brotherhood and that sisterhood. Oftentimes, like what we did with Secret of Cinchony, we had rented Airbnb homes because we were so remote. And a lot of the guys commented afterwards how great it was to have that sort of fellowship again, where they were getting up and having chow together and, talking about, what they were doing that day on set, what the objective was and whatnot. And that's a beautiful thing to hear, especially, when I've talked about Command Sergeant Major Don Mcallister, he was 27 years in, and I think he says that was one of the biggest things that he missed, was that camaraderie. And so I think a big thing that Nate and I have taken on, and I think as other companies or veteran service organizations, anyone out there that's trying to help a veteran, number one is caring. you have to care. Two is that most veterans just want to feel vital. They want to feel like they can be utilized, right? That there's a sense of purpose. And so it's really, for us, it's like focusing on how to lay the groundwork to provide that kind of environment, and then utilizing the strengths and weaknesses of that particular individual as best we can. And I can't say it enough, and hopefully give them a lifelong experience that they can cherish.
Wow, you are to be roundly commended for that, Steve. You don't need me to tell you that. That's beautiful work. It is. And these, and I don't want to get maudlin or overly dramatic, but that's beyond just cursory. Yeah, I'll attach my name to that. You've invested your soul in supporting people that we can't thank enough, and that's outstanding. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, these are my brothers and sisters. Like, this family that I'm just so honored. There's no way I can really articulate this journey best, other than to just let the proof be in the pudding. I try to let the work be shown in my actions and that of Nate's as well, and what we're trying to create. And I have to tell you, on my own selfish reasons, I get so much out of it. My friendships, when I say family, I genuinely mean that. I mean, there's not a single phone call I wouldn't take at 3 o'clock in the morning, no questions answered. And I'm very fortunate, to be in this position, and I'm really excited about where we're headed with this. I am really excited about, as we continue to sort of build out our sort of team house family, to be able to continually have these experiences. Now, I'll also say, I've mentioned working outside the confines of Hollywood. A lot of what I do also is fundraising, like in terms of putting the private equity together without, utilizing the conventional Hollywood system.
That's tough.
And Nate and I have been on the front lines together on that. And, I think Orson Welles said that, 93%, I'm going to get this quote wrong, 93% of filmmaking is raising the money. The other 7% is actually making the film. I can't tell you how much, right? Right.
Yeah.
But you have these experiences that you are a reminder of why you're doing what you're doing. And of course, the objective is to be able to entertain an audience, and you have to reach an audience, because you don't get to make the next one if you don't. But it's also of like how you get there. I think that the final product is just as interesting as the journey to get there. And that's something that, we make sure that we don't lose sight of.
Well said, Stephen. As everything you've shared with us today is, got to talk about the film after the festival. Again, it's The Secret of Cinchony. Stephen Graham's directorial debut. He also co-stars on the film. He wrote it, and he co-produces it. It runs at the Boston Film Festival, which runs September 22nd through the 26th. Where can people get their eyeballs on your film, Stephen, after the festival?
Okay, so after the festival, in North America, the film will be released in select theaters and on all VOD platforms. That includes Amazon Prime Video, Comcast. It'll be everywhere. Right. So October 8th to Friday next month, North America. In the UK, it'll be available on October 29th. We're actually screening at the Raindance Film Festival in the UK. So it'll be released the day after. And it'll be on similar platforms. We also have a distribution deal for all non-English speaking worldwide territories, so it'll eventually be available around the world.
Wow.
But for the North American audience that's listening now, October 8th. If you have Apple TV, if you have Comcast, any of your providers, you can watch it there. In select theaters, I think in some of the major cities, it'll be out as well. But everybody's support on this film, I took a big swing. I feel like, and I hope that the film delivers for everybody. Again, it's outside the confines of the genre, and that was part of that big swing, to try to do something that might be a little bit more meaningful, but satisfying at the same time.
Yeah, every film, pretty much every film, is made and it needs to be commercially viable. We get that, but there is. I'm just going to say this, and people can, I offer my feelings on a film. People can decide what they'd like to do. There is true heart and soul in this film, and there are things that you did in this film, Stephen, that you didn't have to do, but clearly was important for you for it to be a component of your art. And that's, we talked about the veterans and their experience. Brave is too strong a word, and I don't mean that in a diminishing sense, but that's extraordinary and special. I watch a lot of films, and there's a lot of easy way out type things, and that's fine. It's entertainment, and people make what they make and watch what they watch and enjoy it. But there's more going on in the secret of Senchiny than just a commercial vehicle, and I mean that as a compliment.
Wow, that means a lot to me. Thank you.
A big part of the film, and I couldn't help but think, and people watching the film this will probably spring to their mind, about Quentin Tarantino, and the topic of stylized violence. The violence that you show is stylized. It's like artistic, and there's there's a joy and a satisfaction, and people will understand why this may be the case. With Jera, with your lead character. I have seen The Flood, and a few questions, obviously, I want to ask you about it. I wanted to get started, though, asking you, Victoria, where did the idea for The Flood come for you? I mean, obviously, it deals with 1940s era, World War II era Australia, and the Australian government and religious organizations, and the abhorrent way that they treated Aborigines, Aboriginal tribes people, and the native people of Australia. Kind of flesh that out for us, Victoria, and tell us where that idea came from, and what you wanted to bring across in your film on the screen in terms of the impact on your audience.
Well, that's quite a far-reaching and complex question, John.
I know it is. What was your?
So I'll go back. Okay, I'll go back to a different answer to what I normally give, and go right back to the kernel of the moment. I had been wanting to make a short film a few years ago, and I was quite inspired by Django Unchained at the time, and I thought, we're not really in Australia, we haven't or hadn't reached the point yet where First Nations people were being represented in that way, in that kind of powerful, warrior, cool, amazing kind of characters, or not that I was seeing. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to make a short film that kind of did that. And I was doing a lot of research, and I do have a love of that particular era. And what I discovered was, when First Nations soldiers from Australia went and fought for this country in World War II, they were promised citizenship. And when they returned, they were still denied citizenship, not considered to be human beings even. And in the ultimate insult, the government took their own homelands and gave them to white soldiers as part of the soldier settlement scheme at the end of the war. So not only did they fight for this country, they also had their home taken and given to their mates for them to then live on. And I was so incensed by that I made a short film, Miro, which is about that, and it sort of encompasses many of the other things that First Nations people were going through at the time. Mm-hmm. And that film called Miro, starring Mark Cole Smith, the woman who played his wife was Alexis Lane in that film, and it was a very small part. Okay. But she was so brilliant, and I thought, I want to make a film for her. And I was wondering, well, what's it like for people of colour or women of colour and First Nations women at that time? So The Flood was kind of born out of telling that story within that complex political, social web, that historical web that Australia was and still is. So even though it's set back, in the 40s, it's still incredibly relevant for where we are now. So yeah, I guess that's how it came to be.
Well, yeah, and that leads to my next question, Victoria. What, in your opinion and your assessment, is the relationship with the Australian government, Australian authorities, and its native tribespeople and countrymen and women? Where does it stand now in your view?
Long way to go still, I would say. There's politically, there's a lot of resources put into First Nations programs, but on the whole, they're not actually dealing directly with the First Nations people when they set them up. So there still isn't that level of consultation and collaboration that we need to have in order to move forward as a united country. And again, this film is kind of a microcosm of that. It's looking at, okay, how can we unify? And ultimately, that is what the film is about, that reconciliation, that redemption, that unification of us as people. And it still needs to happen.
That resonates with me. I had a job, a position where I worked with the Native American community in America, and so much of this parallels your movie, and the history of Australia parallels the Native American experience in our country, in the United States. And tremendous progress has been made, but and I saw this firsthand. It's not enough, and that resonates in your film in terms of what's going on in this particular era of our history in the 1940s. But there was an idea too that while things have improved, it's okay, we're fine where we are. Let's just stop and everything's great. And that really made an impact on me watching your movie, because, like I say, that's something that connects with most Americans in terms of the experience of Native American tribes people in the U.S. It's just interesting. I've never, even with Tarantino and Scorsese, and I watched a lot of films, never seen it depicted quite the way you did. It was, I want to say comical, Victoria, but it wasn't comical. And that clearly was by intent.
Yeah. So interesting that you mentioned Tarantino, because of course I think he is quite an influence. I mean, I love his work, but for me, where I feel, and with Scorsese and the people you talk about, with their violence, it doesn't leave room for feeling, for you to be able to feel throughout the experience of it. And so I think the way I handled it was, it is almost like a dance too, in many ways. I mean, there's quite a lot of different periods of shootouts and violence and in the film. And I think each of them's probably a little bit different. So I might give a different answer to each of those scenes if I were talking about it. But you mentioned Jarrah, and I'm assuming you're talking about the bar scene. Oh, am I correct?
Yes, you are. That's one of them. That was that particularly struck me that way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, firstly, I wanted the enjoyment of that, of seeing that scene unfold in that way, and I enjoy it immensely on a personal level. I love that.
I do.
And yes,
I believe.
Yeah, and it does have that lightness in there, but then that is contrasted by what happens immediately after that violence, which I think we never get to see in films, or I haven't seen it yet, not to say it doesn't exist, where we have to deal with the consequences of what it does to us emotionally to become that. And so I wanted you to be really getting off on that scene and enjoying it, and then having to face the consequences of that. And I think, as humans, that is a really important thing for us to do, because we are flooded by images of violence that we never have to think about. It's just there. So, and I wonder too if that doesn't make us immune to it, or make a world where we allow that to exist more than is healthy for us. Following that violence with what Jarrah then goes on to experience, I think is something that I wanted to look at and for all of us to look at, I guess.
The film is The Flood, and it emanates from Australia, and the writer, director, and co-producer is the woman who we've just been talking to here over the last several moments, Victoria Worth McIntyre. Victoria, thanks so much for joining us, and all the best with The Flood and your further adventures in film down the line.
Thank you so much, John, and I hope people will go and see it, or you don't even have to go anywhere to see it. Just turn on your TV.
There you go. Open Field gives us an inside look at the women of tackle football. Now, this is full pad tackle football, and it gives us an insight into women's tackle football, and really the women, the human beings who play literally for the love of the game against all odds. They're not getting paid. They have a passion and a love that manifests itself in what they do, which is basically sacrificing a lot of their life to play football. It's about football, but it's really about, Open Field is about, and we'll get into this, expression of the true soul and the true spirit, and not having somebody tell you that you can't do something, and saying, hell with it. I'm just going to talk about it. I am going to do it. And that really resonated with me. I have 3 guests today. So it's the first time we've had 3 guests. We have Kathy Curtis. She is a first-time director. This is her first feature film as director, Open Field. We have John Alexander, who's the editor and co-producer of Open Field. And then we have Sammy Grisafi, who is featured in the film. She is a star quarterback. And we come to find out during the journey of Open Field that she's also a really top-notch musician. Welcome to all of you. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you. Good to be here, John.
Absolutely. Kathy, we're going to start with you. How did it come to be that that you, first of all, women's tackle football got on your radar, and then evolved to such a point that you said, well, I want to make a film about this, a documentary about this, and I want to be the director. This will be my first feature film director. How did this happen for you?
So it happened, I think, in a way that a lot of documentaries happen, which was fairly organic, in that I knew Sammy. We had been doing work together in Chicago on the music front. And then I found out that she was quarterback for this women's football team. And I didn't even know that that women's football existed at the level that it exists, that there's 60 something teams in the US, that we've had, you know, 3 national teams go to a world championship and win a gold medal, like Team USA. And we didn't even know that existed. So it really came from this very organic question of, you know, well, why are these women doing this? To your point earlier, they're not getting paid. Very few people know about it, but they're still showing up and suiting up and going and playing this game and sacrificing a lot to do it. And then just, you know, something that you hear a lot is, I just felt like it was a story that needed to be told, and wanted to raise awareness around it. And that's how I got into it, and we got into it as a group.
Cool. And I have seen the film, and it is, I was drawn to it just by the synopsis of it, and I've seen it, and this is compelling stuff. Kudos to you there, Kathy.
Thank you.
John, you're an integral part of the film as well as co-producer and editor. Editing-wise, what was your approach to this film? Because the word that came to my mind, it may be accurate or may fit or not, but sleek is a word that came to my mind. This thing moves along, it's compelling, you got momentum, and you had to incorporate home video footage, primarily of Sammy playing as a kid, and then through her high school career, she played high school tackle football. What were the challenges for you, and how did you approach editing open field to make it the best production that it could be?
Yeah, thanks, John. I feel like you hit it right on the head. I mean, it was a vast array of different types of footage, from home video footage to recent footage, interview footage, candid behind-the-scenes type footage, action footage from games. And there's like, how do we tie all this into something that's cohesive? And the fact that you called it sleek is like great compliment. It's great to hear that, because it was overwhelming. That was one of the biggest challenges, just to bring in all these different elements that we wanted to include in a way that felt like it was all necessary, including Sammy's music. The approach that we took was following Sammy's story and Sammy's voice and Sammy's energy, her personality, her attitude was sort of what shaped the story. So rather than just kind of doing an expose on women's football, we followed Sammy's sort of arc, or her backbone, through her journey, you know, starting from her childhood to adulthood, through her football career, and tried to branch off of Sammy's story all the things we wanted to include about the larger world of women's football.
Cool, and mission accomplished.
Thanks.
Yeah, Sammy is the thrust of the film, the focal point of the film, and we move to Sammy now. Sammy, there's so many questions I want to ask you now, but
go for it. That's what we're here for, isn't it?
Yeah, this may kind of be unusual for you, but it resonates with me, and I know it's gonna with our viewers. You know, your parents were huge, and as most parents are in our lives.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you, your parents kind of reflect my parents, in that your mom is pretty external, okay? She's pretty expressive of her feelings and emotions. And
that's great.
I think you understand where I'm coming from there. And your dad, pretty chill, kind of more of an internal, introspective guy, and just, it's not a priority for him to say a hell of a lot all the time. You know what I mean? And this is my parents. We lost my mom last year, and my dad's still going strong, but that really resonated with me and touched me as I watched the film. Talk about your parents, if you would, Sammy, in terms of how they shaped your soul and your spirit, and then how it touched your life playing football.
You know, I just was very lucky. to have the parents that I had. I think that the main thing that they instilled in my brother and I is to work hard and to be a good person. I think that's the main thing. I think that's really been the crux of our life. It's, be a good human being so you can feel good about what you're doing in the world. For example, that's a very broad statement, right? But if I wanted to do something like with football, when I first decided that I wanted to play football, they said, sure, you can play football, but once you commit to playing this season, you're in it. So you can't abandon your teammates. You can't decide that you just don't want to do it anymore because it's hard. So just think long and hard about it because you're making a commitment to people. And I think that's a really good example of the parenting that my parents gave me. And they're just, they got big hearts and they believed in me wholeheartedly. I mean, I got very lucky. Lots of love in my house in growing up, and belief in me and my brother. So that's I would say those are the foundational pieces.
Yeah, and it just pours through on the screen in the film, and that's really touching and just frankly emotional. To see that. What your parents told you is exactly what my dad told me and my brother and my sister. You don't have to do anything, but if you're going to do this, you're going to
do it right.
You're not going to quit. That was my dad's main thing, man. You will not quit. So
do it to the best of your ability. If you're going to do something, do it all the way.
Yeah, don't jack around, as we used to say in high school.
Exactly. There you go. We're missing words here. Let's get down to it. Yeah.
Exactly.